Looks like we're live. Welcome to Gamcast for Saturday afternoon. We're here to talk about the continuing injunction hoax and the efforts to block and deny the election. A lot to get to today, and I'm not broadcasting as much, so I'm going to run through a bunch of things. Here's Laura Loomer claiming that Judge Boasberg, he's the one that ruled against Trump trying to deport illegals and actually went so far as to order him to turn around a plane. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but there's a difference between enjoining somebody from doing something in the future and maintaining what at law we call the status quo ante, and actually asking them to affirmatively do something. I'll get to that in a minute, but I want to cover this real quickly because a lot of people have said this, and it's just simply not correct. Just because the judge's daughter works for a group that advocates on behalf of illegals, that is not a conflict. This comes up a lot. The left will claim it. They're lying. They don't care when they do it, but when something went on their side, they do. And really, it's just not correct. The only thing that would be a true conflict for which Boasberg would have to recuse himself would be if he had an actual interest in the actual organization. These are individuals, so it's not applicable here, or if he, for example, if he had a relationship with one of the people before him, yes, he would need to recuse. But this is not sufficient here. Stephen Miller, I think the president, one of his advisors, lays out what is going on here pretty well. Take a listen.
Is President Trump still calling for the impeachment of Judge Boasberg in this case, despite what Chief Justice Roberts said yesterday?
Of course the president stands by his comments, absolutely, as do we all, as does the entire administration. You cannot have a democracy where single individual district court judges can assume the full total powers of the commander-in-chief. Even on the Supreme Court, it takes agreement of five.
Before he makes that point, which is a good one, I want you to hear it. But let me make the point here, what he's talking about. He's exactly right. Whenever they start dealing with purely executive authority, you are dangerous at that point. Now, to be fair, here we're not dealing with purely executive authority. There's a lot of executive authority here, but you do have the rights of the individuals who are deported. So in this case, a habeas corpus action just means bring the body to the court so I can weigh these interests. It's fine. I mean, he's not disobeying the Constitution there. In other instances, for example, we'll get to in a minute, where you're talking about purely executive functions like what's going on at the Department of Education, they're clearly over their skis and they know it. But here's the other point that Miller makes, and I'll expand upon it in a minute.
5 Supreme Court justices to change a federal policy. 5. A single district court judge out of 700.
So he makes the point there that even the Supreme Court, which does potentially, as a co-equal branch of government, have the authority to go toe-to-toe with the president, right? It should not just be these lower court judges. Even if they do it, it takes 5 of them, or if some have recused, whatever a majority would be, but not one single person. You have these district court judges, one judge, appointed, not elected, right? And they are literally claiming to have power for these nationwide injunctions, which only became a thing in 1963. We need to get back to the Constitution where one judge can only do something to the litigants before him or her, and within his or her district. Then you go up to the circuit court level. You've got usually about 3 states in a claim. They can do something within their circuit, but not other circuits. And then the Supreme Court is the only one that has jurisdiction over the entire land. Miller makes a good point. Another thing I want to talk about real quick. I know I'm going really fast, but I got to cover a lot, and I got to do it in 6 or 7 minutes or less. All right. So one of the things you have to understand about all these injunctions. Injunctions are merely to maintain the status quo, not to force you to do something in the future. And you have to understand the standard here, because it's important when you see these judges doing these things. It should strike you as incorrect that they're usurping the executive's authority. But you also have to consider the high standard here. So one, you have to show that as the plaintiff, so these people who were deported, that you have a likelihood of succeeding on the merits. They have very little likelihood, so that would be enough reason to deny it, right? Irreparable injury. Okay, in this case, folks, they absolutely have an irreparable injury. You've been kicked out of the country. That's irreparable. Can't undo that. So they would meet that standard. But these people who've been fired, there's not an irreparable injury there. You can get paid money for the job that you were doing, right? And it would be laughable for me to go to a court and say, give this person their job back. Well, why wouldn't money be sufficient? And I said it wouldn't be sufficient. It would be laughable. Unless you had a job that was very unique, which, for example, most of these cases, they're not. The move that has demonstrated proposed injunction may cause may not cause harm to the opposing party. They can't do that either in this instance or in many others. For example, it does cause harm to the United States to have people, and then balancing the equities, just pure discretion on that case. But I just wanted people to understand what's going on here. Not only are they usurping authority, but this is a very high standard. It should only occur in rare cases. And as you can see, it's not rare. It's happening all the time. And these judges are just not only violating their authority, they don't have the authority to tell the president what to do, they're also disregarding the law. But it's all to do this. And again, Scott Adams, the Dilbert creator, says it all the time. If you don't know the players, you can't understand things. Here's Norm Eisen. He's a former Obama, DOJ, or some type of official, I can't recall which, but he's one of these fascists that he goes around just to muck up the works. In fact, if you scroll up and you'll see on Twitter, he's now changed his name to Trying Trump, which is some book about where he's trying to rig things for Trump. Take a listen to what he has to say about the Boasberg case.
The judge, in the first instance, can hold the government in civil contempt. He can find against them in the case. He can penalize them by saying, I'm going to rule against you or draw an inference against you in the case. He can, in the most extreme case, refer for criminal contempt, although...
Again, folks, this is just insanity. So you've now got to the point where they're usurping executive authority and they're essentially election denying. They don't like what Trump is doing, and they're issuing these injunctions that are nationwide when they don't have the authority because the litigants are before them, and they don't have authority outside of their districts, which are small. But now you've literally gotten to the point where they're talking about holding the government in contempt. And later he's going to go on and talk about criminal attempt. Imagine if this judge comes in and says, I hereby hold the Trump administration in criminal contempt. What kind of a constitutional crisis we're in. And again, Trump will ignore it. Trump is not going to prosecute himself, and he's not going to prosecute his own Department of Justice. That would be insanity. But they're forcing it to a point where the media can then run with all these headlines so that they can say Trump's lawless, Trump's a dictator, Trump's a Nazi, Trump's authoritarian, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all because they lost an election. And it wasn't even a particularly close election. As we saw this week, we had a poll that came out that if everybody had voted who was registered, Trump wouldn't have won by 1.5. He would have won by 4.5. But anyway, just so, again, make the point about knowing the players. And I lost it. I had him. See if I can find it real quickly again. Norm Eisen. Here we go. Perfect. Okay, I had it, lost it. So you have to know who Norm Eisen is. And again, he's one of these persons who gets paid millions, trillions, whatever, by the deep state to just go and muck up the works. He's not interested in actually governing or the rule of law or having a debate about what the law should be or how government should work, any of that. He's just in trying to destroy things. Well, here he is, and this is actually good news for us. We're suing, he tweets, we're suing Kerry Lake and others to stop dismantling the voice of America. Folks, if they were smart, they would use this grift and they would be more limited about it, and they would keep it to things that they really care about. They care about illegals, keep it to that. They care about USAID. They care about all these deep state money that they can abscond with. They wouldn't be so stupid as to going after something like the voice of America. But again, I'm going to finish up here and make the point. Again, he's literally asserting that the President of the United States does not have authority over Voice of America, which is the broadcast arm of the armed forces. I mean, the commander-in-chief power is perhaps one of the most biggest powers the president has, and he's saying courts can tell him what to do with respect to the armed services, and something so simple. If he's willing to risk his little grift over this, these people are just not smart. I mean, as a lot of people say, they've always been corrupt. They're now corrupt and stupid. So hopefully this grift will end soon, and Chief Justice Roberts will see the mistake he made by going after Trump instead of these rogue justices. Anyway, if you enjoyed this content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And if you do, you will see me on the next one.